Welcome today, guys. Welcome, my beautiful friend, to the Mind Fuck podcast. My name is Wanu, or you can also call me Amazing Soul. Thank you so much for taking some time to hang out with me today on the podcast. Yay! Let's get into it today. I'm really excited about today's episode. Um, I will be speaking on something that is very near and dear to my heart. And it took me a while to feel very comfortable to talk about this because I wanted to talk about this from a place of embodiment. I wanted to talk about this from a place of I have personally experienced this, and this was my own experience, hence why I'm sharing my experience with you. So, today I'm going to be talking about the power of a regulated nervous system. A nervous system is what me and you have. Without a nervous system, we can't actually function as human beings. A nervous system is how me and you interact with the world. So if we have a dysregulated nervous system, we're constantly in fight or flight. We're constantly projecting our fears onto whatever we're directly experiencing, whether it might be people or experiences, whatever it may be. Dysregulated nervous system is always constantly leaving in fight or flight. Now, on the other hand, it's very possible to have a coherent, regulated nervous system. That doesn't happen overnight. It takes intention. It's more intentional and really understanding yourself and your body to get to that space of having a coherent nervous system. So I'll give myself as an example. But before I share my example or my story on my experience with nervous system regulation, I will say this, and I'll share a bit of, my perspective on how I have seen how most of us experience reality. So from a very basic neuroscience point of view, so we have our thoughts. Our thought influences our belief system, our identity, and that influences our behavior. Our behavior influences our reality, right? That's just basic, pure neuroscience, brain body connection. Now, most of us are on this hamster where we go over and over, repeat the same unconscious patterns. Most of us don't even know why we keep experiencing reality the way we do. Now, something beautiful happens along our journey where probably we've been experiencing the same stuff, and all of a sudden, either something happens in our reality, either something traumatic happens, a close family member passes away and we have to process grief, then our brain starts to perceive life differently. Now, remember how I said it's your thought, accumulated thought over and over that, ultimately influences your belief system, your identity, your sense of self, and that, influences your behavior, and that in turn influences your reality. It's like this loop. It's like a beautiful loop that happens over and over again. Now, here's the thing. Once you start to experience reality and something happens. So for me, I'll use myself as an example. What happened a few years ago was excruciating lower back pain, excruciating pain where I couldn't sleep on my back. So that was what I was experiencing in my reality probably about 4 years ago. And that's when awareness kicked in because my body had gotten to a place of so much pain. I don't want to use force because force is seeming like I'm trying to make something into fruition. It was more, I had outgrown um, that version of myself that I started to become aware of my behaviors, right? So awareness kicks in. So I want you to imagine all your life you're in a dark room, right? And in that room is full of your belief system, your patterns, your thought process, the thing that you're shameful about, that you just put in the closet, and it's all dark. So for me, I was in that dark room for almost 3 decades of my life. And all those things was just repeating itself. Remember, thought, identity, belief system influences your behavior creates your reality. So for me, for 3 decades, I was in a room that was dark. I wasn't aware. So the very first thing that had to happen before anything starts to shift or transform, I had to be aware that I was having this behavior, I was having this thought pattern, I was having this identity. So awareness had to kick in. So the very first thing is, imagine you're in a dark room and you turn on the lights. That is awareness. Awareness kicked in. Now, here is what I did 4 years ago that I see most of us doing, that really now from a different point of view. For me, I feel like regret is a waste of energy. I don't live my life in regrets. I always give myself compassion and kindness and grace. Like, I only knew what I knew with the level of awareness that I knew. That's okay. So me 4 years ago, once I turned on the light and I saw all that shit, the pain, the shame, the trauma, the childhood trauma of abandonment, I saw all that when I turned on the lights, right? The awareness. Guess what I started to do? I was like, whoop, I gotta fix this. I went into fixing mode. I gotta control this. I gotta fix this. This is not right. But here is what I want you to learn from me. Fixing, there's nothing right or wrong about trying to evolve into a more wholesome version of you. But for me, 4 years ago, it's not right or wrong. The intention was, it was broken. There's something to fix in my life. So I went into fixing mode. I gotta cut this part off. This part is bad. This part is good. But that's not how you approach your nervous system. Because what I did then created more resistance. What I did then created more enhancement of the patterns I was already unconsciously repeating. It really took a lot of really slowing down, really starting to really truly understand the nervous system coherent regulation from a space of neutrality. And that took a lot of slapping so many things on the wall. I did the whole reprogramming, I did the whole affirmations, I did anything you can think of under the sun to fix yourself. I did the medication route, I did the whole spiritual route, read books. There's nothing right or wrong about any, even going to the hospital, doing the medication route or doing the spiritual route or the awakening. There's nothing right or wrong about those routes. But from my experience, my intention was to fix myself until I realized there is nothing to fix. I really do hope you take this from my own life experience. I've realized that my pain wasn't here to be fixed. My pain was a gateway for me to start to realize or start to become aware of how to start to feel safe in my body. My body was just sending me signals all this while, but I ignored it unconsciously. No right or wrong. It was until the body couldn't take it anymore that it allowed me to finally see what this pain was teaching me about myself. Sometimes I gotta slow down. Sometimes I gotta take action. Sometimes I gotta go fast. It's like a cyclical rhythm, right? Once I started to understand that, right, and I started to see my intention of trying to fix things, I was actually dismissing the wisdom of what got me there. My body was in survival mode. Being in survival mode is not right or wrong. I had to start to acknowledge those parts of me that got me to where I was. Start to show those parts of me compassion. And I think one huge thing that really helped with the coherent nervous system was honesty. I started becoming honest. Once I turn on the lights, remember the light analogy? Once I turn on the lights in my life, I just started becoming honest. I'm like, I'm not trying to change anything anymore. I'm not trying to fix anything in my life. The intention now is how do we approach and integrate this parts of us with compassion and kindness and micro moment of safety. Remember how I did the whole thought, identity, influence your behavior, reality. I started to work backwards. Yes, I'm experiencing this. I'm aware of all this stuff that happened in my life, all this trauma, this pain. I was essayed when I was a kid. I'm aware of all that. I had a car accident when I was a kid that affected my left side of my brain. I'm aware of I was bullied in high school. All those stories came up to the surface once I started to become aware. That was my reality because awareness brought it to the surface. So I started to work backwards. I didn't try to change my thoughts anymore. Nah, because that creates more resistance that and also adds to the narrative that there's something to fix in your life. And I'm here to remind you there is nothing to fix. You just have to start to feel safe in your body first. That's the very first thing. With micro moments of safety, you can start to approach those parts of you in a very compassionate, wholesome way. So, this is what I did. This was happening in my reality, so I started to work my way backwards. Reality, shame, trauma, essay, bullying, all that story. I'm not worthy, abandonment, all that story, right? I didn't change it. I just acknowledged, okay, these are all parts of me. Then every day, with grace, compassion, and kindness, as often as I remembered, I started to create micro moments of safety in my life. I started to, alter my daily routines. It's called neuroplasticity, neuroscience. I started to acknowledge my emotion 60 to 90 seconds. If I can't sit for more than 90 seconds, I just give myself at least 60 to 90 seconds. And went over one, I started to create like a big enough container to help me process my emotions. I'll give you an example. There's something that I used to do to avoid my pain. I used to eat. I used to emotionally eat to avoid my pain. And I didn't even realize I was doing it. But once I turned up the lights and I started to become aware, I was like, holy shit, I'm doing this. Now remember, let me tell you something about the brain. The brain doesn't like to be judged. The more you judge your brain, the more you judge your behavior, it resists. It starts to create the pattern because judging the brain is not how we get out of habits. You have to find like a middle ground on how you can approach the brain in a very coherent way. Like, hey, I see you. I'm aware I'm doing this. I'm not trying to fix it. The more you start to acknowledge and accept those parts of yourself, it's easier for those parts of yourself to start to soften. And that's what happened to me with overeating, trying to numb my pain. Once I realized I was overeating, and I started to understand micro moments of safety, the awareness comes up. Once the pain comes up, okay, the awareness comes up. Oh, I have to eat to numb myself. I don't judge it anymore. But this is what I always did back then. The awareness comes up. I become aware of the emotion or the feeling or the behavior, and I give myself a 60 to 90-second window. That's how long it takes your body to just process that feedback. 60 to 90 seconds. And I still go eat. I don't suppress the emotion. I don't suppress the habit. I still go eat every fucking time. And the more I did that, over time, it started to register to my brain. Oh, wow, she's not judging this habit. No, 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 I'm not. There was honesty, there was compassion, but also there was that window, there was that gap between the thoughts, the belief system, and the behavior and the reality. Once that thought that influenced my belief system, I had a 60 to 90-second gap before I went on to the behavior to the reality. Did you see the difference? The awareness, there was that gap there. And I gave myself every time, as often as I remembered, but I still went on to eat or overeat, whatever you may call it. And the more I kept doing that, it registered to my brain. Holy shit, you're not judging me? No, I'm not. And the habit started to soften, soften, started to lose its grip. And as the pain softened, as the habit started to soften, my brain started to let go and create new neural pathways in my brain. And that's how that habit dissolved. Not through forcing, not through trying to fix. And that's when it started to click in my brain. I was like, holy shit, we do not have to stop our habits that we do not like. I don't care what your habit is. You can apply this same principle to any habit you know it's not aligning with who you're trying to become. Thought, identity, belief system, right? There's a gap. And that gap is you giving yourself, if the thought comes up and it's already part of your psyche, give yourself 60 to 90 seconds, whatever it may be, whether it's smoking, coffee, whatever. We all have our vices. Mine was overeating. Whatever it may be, give yourself that gap. Then still go do it. Because you can outrun or outsmart the version of you that brought you to that moment. That version kept you safe. So you have to acknowledge that version. And it's not by force. You don't do it by force. You don't just stop a habit, hard stop a habit. Because if you do that, your brain reinforces that habit and it becomes harder to stop. Remember, we are not judging our habits like this is good, this is bad. No, we're just acknowledging that it exists. And with some honesty and openness, then we can start to soften the edges of those habits you don't really like, to start to evolve into the versions of ourselves that we're becoming. And that's exactly what happened to me. And once I started to understand the power of that gap, just 60 to 90 seconds. And over time, those micro moments, before you respond to that email or text message, take a 2-second breath. If you feel so overwhelmed, take a walk, then come back again. Just those mini micro moments, they may seem small, but they make a huge difference on your nervous system regulation. And the moment you start to feel safe, something starts to happen. Now, you're not changing your reality. No, that's not what we're saying here. You start to interact with your reality differently. That's the power of feeling safe in our bodies. And once you start to interact with your reality differently, it starts to affect your behavior. Once it starts to affect your behavior, it starts to soften the character, the identity, the belief system starts to soften gently. And that ultimately starts to impact your thoughts. I won't call it reverse engineering, but that's the word that is coming to my mind right now. But that's how I started to understand the power of working backwards. Because for a while on my journey, I'll be honest, giving myself grace, I thought I had to start to interrupt my thoughts. I was like, no, no, no. I needed to change my relationship with my reality. And that just changes or transforms or evolves everything. Not from any place of fixing or this was bad and this was good. No, from a place of coherence, from a place of safety. And that doesn't happen overnight. That happens through micro moment of safety. That happens through compassion for yourself. That happens through loving all parts of yourself. That happens through honesty. I had to just be honest with myself, just speaking my truth, regardless of what it was, because I understand that most of us, the reason why we hold on to our shame is because there were survival strategies, right? When I started to talk more about how I was using food to numb my pain, not from a place of making that part of myself feel bad, from I see you and I thank you so much for um, using that to keep us safe, because that's all your fucking brain and body is doing all the time. That's the wisdom that they do to keep us safe with the tools or no tools that's available to them in that moment. So why, when we now get aware of what's going on under the hood, why is that the first thing we do is try to fix? No, that just reinforces, or that just reinforces that we feel like that part of us is bad. Because there's no bad or good. It's just once you start to remember and start to feel safe, that just impacts. It's like a domino effect. But it starts with awareness. It starts with safety. If you're listening to me right now and you're currently in a space in your life where you have a habit, or you're going through some kind of pain and you have a habit that you use to numb that pain, I just want to remind you, it's not right or wrong. But the very first step is start to being aware, just being aware that you're doing it. Awareness has an immense impact in truly transforming and evolving a more coherent nervous system. The more safe we feel in our bodies, it's easier for us to start to respond to life, to start to truly love ourselves from a place of honesty, openness, and that has an immense ripple on our, just not just ourselves, on our loved ones, on with around people that interact with us, and the world at large. Because I know, we're currently living in very uncertain times, but I truly feel like the very first step we all got to do is start to experience life from a very embodied nervous system. So this is a reminder from me to you, my friend. When it gets dark, when it gets confusing, come back to some compassion and kindness for yourself.